the names of people who are leading the study. So I put Ali, and then I started talking. So
You're probably thinking what happened to Ali. He looks so different.
yeah, but it's good nowadays. Now it shows the name at the bottom also.
Oh yeah,
I
I
think I don't know if
noticed.
it shows with the video. Yeah, with the video too, it shows.
Mhm.
Yeah, at the bottom.
Yeah, also, God says in another place that your money and your children are your test. And so here God's talking about they kill their children and the idol inflict pain, so much pain on them. And if if you think about it, the opposite is also true. That in Surah 7, God says they pray for for a child, and when God gives them a child, they make him as idol. And what
Mm-hmm.
happens is, God, and I've noticed it personally that observed it in several people that God will put too much love in their heart for the children, to the
Mm-hmm.
point that one person would not even send their children to school, that they may get hurt. And with so
Mm-hmm.
much love, and then something happens, they get so much pain. And this is the way God, you okay, this is your idol, okay, that's it, and not for only for your children, for money too. God will put too much love in your heart for your money, that, and you will work day and night to earn it. This becomes your idol. You worship money, and whenever, and you get so much stress about money, that, I mean, if you can lose it or whatever happens, that stress is just, you know, it's pain, and you're worrying and all that
Mm-hmm.
stuff about your children, your money, or anything else that you do in your life. Very simple formula. God is telling you, if you worship, if you obey God, God will take care of us with peace of mind. I mean, that is. I mean, I went to a family. They pretty much everybody was suffering. I mean, they was just listing the problem on and on and on. And I'm like, and then I was just sitting and I was like talking to them that all we need to do is just come back to God. God will give you so much peace, so much joy in your heart and happiness that you don't even have to worry about where your money is gonna come from. And they're just looking at my face and you're like, I mean, this person is like, where did he come from? And I'm like, this is very simple ABC. You have the book from God. All you need to do is follow is, instead of talking to me and telling me, can you pray for me? I said, you don't need anybody to pray for you. You don't even have to pray for your own self if you really start worshiping and really coming back to God's religion. Praise God.
Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum. I had one
Assalamualaikum.
question actually. It is Jafar,
So,
brothers.
Uh-oh.
So is there a standard line for loving your children? For example, when can we say that we love our children too much? Is there? How can we know actually if we are going over the line? And that's the same count actually also for money as well, because you need money, you need to use money, right? You need to work for money. I know, of course. Like if everything is money in your life, that's actually worshipping money, or the
Mm-hmm.
same counts for children.
Mm-hmm.
But I have two kids and I love my children, and every time when I look at them, I thank God for them. It's like a way to remember God as well. So, but is there something, a
Mm-hmm.
sign that I can know of? Oh, okay, now I'm crossing the
Mm-hmm.
line, let's say.
Yeah, yeah, there is. I mean, for example, let's say you think about your day and think about how much you are thinking about your children, right? If you think about your children more than you think about God, then this is an indication for you that, you're putting your children in a higher position than God in your life, right? So God has to occupy our minds at least 50% of the time, right? And so if you if you find yourself that, like, maybe God is 40% and your let's say your child is 51%, and then the rest of the time is something else, then you know that. your children are your idols, you're loving them more than God, and you're worshiping your children, right? Anything that occupies your mind most of the day is your God. So yeah, you can love your spouse, you can love your children, and but obviously, you can't make them your gods by just uh, s- just occupying your mind with them this much,
Yeah, but you can also use it like to remember God actually, like we do it while we are eating, right? So
Yeah, of course.
uh, before I remember one of the Quran studies was about if you eat something, don't watch TV, right? Look at what you're eating and thank God for it and think
No, not
about
don't watch TV.
um,
You can watch TV, but at
or
least
in,
you have to be mindful of what you're eating and remembering God. You're thanking God for it, yeah, basically. But no, I'm not prohibiting people from watching TV.
yeah, I meant actually like while you're eating, concentrate on what God had created
Hmm.
and that He is
Hmm.
giving that, thinking about that actually instead of
Hmm.
because Nusret was saying, and totally agree on that one, that if you watch
Hmm.
TV and you're eating, you don't even know if your stomach is full or not, and you
Hmm.
don't really appreciate what God has given you at that moment.
Hmm.
So, like you remember God while eating and thinking
Hmm.
about the things God gave you for your body,
Hmm.
etc. The same can count for your children,
Hmm.
even for
Yeah,
money as well, because God is giving it to you. And
yeah.
I think that a submitter is like remembering God any moment and in everything what you see. So I think if you think of your children, of course, we need to take care of them, but remembering in a way that you always remember God first. Every time you see
Hmm.
them, you say, "Oh,
Hmm.
God created them, God gave them. It is a
Hmm.
blessing from God." Maybe in that way, it's not like idolatry.
Hmm.
It's not like
Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, that was the point. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, if you're thinking about God during all of these things, then obviously you're thinking about God, It's not because you're thanking God, so God is on your mind, not your child.
Yeah, so because for a submitter, if I think that's maybe one of the most important things, that because you are a submitter, everything in your life is actually a way to find and remember God. So it's actually a good thing that God can give you children, God will give you money,
Hmm.
or all the other things. God will give it to you, but the submitter will always remember God in those things. So
Hmm.
it's actually a good thing, I think, in that case.
Yeah. Hmm.
And Suleiman, there was a verse in the Quran where Suleiman was busy with his horses, right?
Hmm.
I remember that it says that, "Oh, I am um, loving you because you make me remember God." Is it correct, Suleiman?
No, no,
How was that?
no, no. It was basically the other way, like because he became preoccupied with his horses, and then he ended up missing his prayer. So then he got rid of the horses because Satan was going to make a claim against him, saying that he loves his horses more than God. So to nullify their claim, he actually got rid of the horses.
Okay, so he actually forgot remembering God because of his uh, love
Horses.
towards the horses, let's say. Oh, it
Yeah.
made,
Hmm.
so the earthly thing made
Hmm.
him forget about God.
Hmm.
Oh,
Yeah.
so that's the opposite. Yeah, okay, that's the opposite. So we need to do the opposite actually.
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah, mashallah, this is a very scary words for us, especially sometimes, like if you miss a contact prayer because you were busy watching a movie or something. I mean, think about it. Do we get rid of our TV or you know? This is actually scary. But these people were, I guess, were at a different level, and we can only repent to God, I guess. But very scary words. Actually.
Has it actually ever happened to you?
mashallah, not as a submitter that
Hmm.
deliberately missed a contact prayer. I missed it. I mean, sleeping, I didn't wake up.
Yeah, sleeping. Yeah, not
Yeah,
watching a
but
movie.
yeah, mashallah, not. I don't recall like something. I mean, that I was so preoccupied with,
Hmm.
and this is all blessing of God. That I mean, if it didn't happen,
Yeah,
but
yeah. Could happen with the movies sometimes when you go to theaters, and
yes,
you have to pick specific times, and then you're outside,
yes,
and you know, like I've had issues with that in the past, where they have certain times, and you have to watch it right when it's time for sunset prayer.
exactly.
It can get tricky. Yeah.
But
One
it's
time
also
I was.
interesting, right? That it's not on one time. Like it's, let's say, 7 o'clock. You need to do it within 5 minutes, and then it's over, right? It's not like that. So
No,
God
no.
gave us.
You have till the next prayer to do it, right? As long as you're doing it within that time frame, you're doing it on time. But
Yeah, it's a blessing from
yeah,
God, right? That it's like that.
yeah.
That God made it
Hmm.
like that. So you
Hmm.
still have time. He gives you time to
Yeah.
remember the time and think about it and find a
Hmm.
way. If it
Yeah.
wasn't like that, we couldn't have been held responsible, right?
Hmm.
Because
Hmm.
of it's sometimes very difficult while driving. You cannot stop and then pray immediately in 5 minutes and then
Hmm.
go again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think fair enough time, I believe,
Hmm.
to do your prayers.
Yeah. And you can see how this works. For example, there is no prayer between your morning all the way, till noon prayer. There's so much extra time for you to work. And then even between the noon and the afternoon, like there's plenty of time, but your afternoon prayer might come around the time where you could be working, so it can get a little tricky sometimes. People are busy and stuff, but for the most part, God made it so that most of the prayers, fall in the lower half of the evening. Like three prayers are falling in that time, and the other two are widely separated at the daytime.
Here, let me make correction. May God forgive me. We did have incidents where like we were shopping or just busy somewhere and not realize, especially in the winter time, the contact prayers are
Oh.
one after another, and you don't realize you already missed the prayer.
Mm.
Yeah, that
Oh
also
yeah.
have things like that happen.
Mm.
But can we say something about missing prayers? Like, a prayer is is a blessing from God, right? It's like a very big
Yeah,
gift.
yep.
Um,
It's just food
and
for
it's
soul.
a Yeah. So and if you miss a prayer, it's actually very very bad, right? And
Mm.
in the Quran, God says, every good thing is from me, and every bad thing that happens to you is from yourself.
Yep.
Um, and if we can say the same for missing a prayer, can we say that that you didn't deserve
Exactly.
having contact with God at that moment, because
Yeah.
maybe because you chose not for God.
Yep.
Well, because you got preoccupied, you're not, God was not on your mind. That's why you miss it,
Right.
you know. So you don't deserve it for that matter. I mean, if God is on your mind, you prioritize it that way, right? So you should be constantly looking at your watch or your phone, you know, looking at the time, looking at the app to
Yeah,
see how
for
much
sure.
time you have.
I had some problems with that, Sliman, but it's solved,
Okay.
alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
because you
solved
get
now,
really
right? Yeah.
used to it,
Or
right?
your,
And if
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
The issue with, yeah, inshallah, that's not gonna happen. Yeah.
Inshallah. But what I was thinking was like this. So I was really used to using the app because it really helps. And when it doesn't work, it's really different. But I was thinking like, okay, there is something probably wrong with my intentions. I don't know. because or otherwise I wouldn't have forgotten, or I would
Hmm.
have made it on time. You know, every time if something happens, you should look at yourself. Is there something wrong? Are my intentions wrong, or am I not thinking about God properly, or am I thinking of other things? And then, because if you miss it, it's really, I think it's really bad to miss a prayer.
Hmm. Yeah, also another important thing to mention here is like, if you miss a prayer like once in a blue moon, you know, the message of the covenant says like don't beat yourself for it, like a lot of people, work, not a lot of people, but I mean for true believers, I mean they work really hard to remember all their prayers, they do their prayers, and maybe once a month, you miss a prayer. So if something like that ever happens, like he said, I mean, that's okay. Like, don't beat yourself for it. I mean, God knows that. And even that's in the Quran, right? That verse that God says that, He's created us weak and He knows that, we could be ill, we could be traveling, we could be searching for God's provisions. And, so a lot of times things can happen. So once in a while, if it happens, that's okay. But if it's a recurring thing, obviously, definitely there's something wrong, if definitely, or if, but most people actually miss it on purpose, not talking about submitters, but all the other people, they don't do it. But yeah, I mean, but if it's a recurring thing, then yeah, that there's definitely something wrong. But I mean, a lot of times when you miss your prayer, obviously you're preoccupied with other things, right? You're not thinking about your prayer. Let's say, hey, I mean, yeah, you're right, Ali. Like you said, I talked about shopping. When you're shopping for something you really want, and you go to these stores and you see all these fancy products and stuff, like, or like, I don't know, you go to, for me, it's like, you go to shopping for a car or something, and you look around, and it's taking a long time, and you miss your prayer in between, right? But it shouldn't be like something that happens on a regular basis, is the point here. Obviously, not saying that we should miss our prayer or we should take it lightly. We should never. But you don't really even beat yourself up for it too. Obviously, you're gonna feel bad anyways when you miss it. So just don't be too harsh on yourself.
Do you also think that it will have an effect on your daily life? So if it's like when you remember God all the time, then you obey His rules. And if you don't, if you miss a prayer, or you don't do what God says, right, for a moment or for a period of time, you will step out from God's kingdom. And
Hmm.
then maybe problems are going to start. Do you think that if you miss a prayer, uh, God will then make something happen, something that maybe will remind you of it? Maybe something bad, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, the thing is that obviously God doesn't, nothing bad comes from God. And so God doesn't do anything bad. And the thing is, if bad things happen, that because we step out of God's protection when we break God's law, right? So if you miss a prayer, obviously, you end up suffering for it, right? So if you like didn't do your dawn prayer, for example, you may end up having a headache that day, for example, right? I mean, that's from you, that's not coming from God, but obviously because you stepped out of God's protection and you incurred it for doing that. God actually wants us to do the right thing. He wants us to be successful, and He wants us to be in His protection. He wants us to be happy. But when you step out, it's the system that you will not have God's protection. So then Satan can afflict you with anything that he's allowed within limits, obviously.
Is it always kind of a punishment, or like a warning? Can God also give you a warning, like maybe you hit your foot somewhere, and then you will have
Mm,
some pain, and then it's not like a bad thing, but some reminders, for a submitter, that because God says in the Quran that the true believers, they can see the signs from God, right? Uh, and you as a believer, if something happens, oh, okay, I'm hurt, so I need to look back at myself and then think about what did I do wrong.
mm.
Probably I just stepped out from God's kingdom. So is it always, yeah, I don't think it's always a punishment, right? It can also be a warning.
Yeah, I mean, a pinch is like, I mean, it's not really a punishment per se, right? Let's say if you're a submitter and you are proven to worship God, you're in God's kingdom, and you do something wrong, whether it's missing a prayer or something else, right? And you get a pinch, you know. So that's a good thing that God is letting you know that hey, you've stepped out of the line. You need to check yourself, right? So that's not necessarily a bad thing. That's a
Actually, a
reminder coming to
blessing.
you that yeah, that's a
That is actually a real blessing. Yeah, if God is doing that to you, you
yeah,
have
but you
always someone who is
yeah,
protecting you. Actually,
yeah, yeah. I mean that in general is a blessing, right? Um, But these things themselves are not blessings as such, where, for example, it's not to be confused with like the blessings in disguise, where let's say, you don't get I mean, a real blessing is, for example, you have an interview and you for a job and you don't get it, and you think that, oh, it's something bad, like why didn't get this job, like maybe I did something wrong, God is not helping me and this and that. But later, when you look back, you know that it was a blessing from God, because if it didn't happen, then you could not have gotten this other position or opportunity, whatever it is, that would have that has benefited you now, so that's a blessing in disguise, really. But really, when you step out of God's kingdom, bad things happen to you as a result of you stepping out of God's kingdom. Now, these bad things are not coming from God, they're coming from Satan. But it's part of God's system, that these things are there so you can fix yourself, right? In that sense, it is a blessing. But obviously, bad things that happen to you during that time is a result of you doing something bad. So you shouldn't think that it's a good thing. It's a bad thing, and it's not from God. But in a
yeah,
way, it's just God's system that's designed to show you, like, like you're driving on the freeway and you're on the road, on the paved road, and then, all of a sudden you veer off the track and we're off your lane and you're out in the concrete area, and your car starts to vibrate and the start to hit the tires and stuff. And so it's like, in that way, yeah, it's a warning that you're supposed to go in the right lane. But obviously at that time, whatever's happening, it's a result of you, being negligent. And I mean, obviously you are suffering in that sense, right? So it's not, I wouldn't necessarily call it a blessing in that sense, because, people have taken, and I'm saying this because some people have taken it the wrong way, in a big way. They have confused I mean, first of all, people who are listening to this and they have questions and they're confused, I would recommend them also to watch the video King of Chaos by Dr. Rashad Khalifa. You can look it up on YouTube, and or on the Submission app also. And basically, they know that there's a big difference between a blessing in disguise and admission test, for example, and a retribution, or So, for example, people who have had like diseases that have been miserable and they end up with permanent damage and end up with all kinds of stuff that is clearly just satanic, as a result of their bad choices, have actually blasphemed and actually said that these are blessings because this helps them to come close to God. Now, in that sense, it's just these people, obviously never. I mean, I'm talking about specific people. and they never use that. I mean, these things didn't allow them to come to God truly because they maintained their wrong ways, but they continue to attribute these bad things to God. Like people got cancer and they're dying, and they're like, "Oh, it's a blessing. I can be with God." People losing their legs permanently, not being able to walk, like, "Oh, it's a blessing, so I can remember God," and stuff like that. So that's really a blessing. I mean, that's really a blasphemy because you're attributing bad things that are happening to you, attributing them to God and calling them blessings. Where the messenger of the covenant is clearly saying that in God's kingdom you will not have these issues, and then these people are just completely confusing all of these things. So when we talk about blessings, like, I think it's important to be specific. There's only one kind of blessing, which is like a disaster in a way, which is a blessing in disguise. So you can really call it a blessing. But then these other things that you're referring to, these are more like pinches when you're actually in God's kingdom and you have these things. And this is just a way of you to remind you that, yeah, you've stepped out. So you stepped out, you're in Satan's kingdom, bad things are happening. Fix yourself so you can come back in. But that's true always throughout God's system, right? And even admissions tests, are instituted to prove our worship to God alone. But every bad thing that happens to you during that time, as part of the test, is not none of it is coming from God. It's all being Satan's the one making claims, and Satan's the one inflicting those bad things on you. And when you pass, God fixes your life, but none of those things actually come from God.
Yeah, I meant also the small pinches, and for submitters who can see the signs. If someone can't see the sign and he doesn't understand, then it won't help him. Uh, he wouldn't even think about, oh, this happened to me because I step out from God's kingdom. He wouldn't even think about
Hmm.
that. So it's
Yeah.
meant like blessing for submitters who can
Hmm.
see the signs when God
Hmm.
gives the signs, and that
Hmm.
of course there are the small
Right.
pinches, not like very
Hmm.
the real bad things. So that
Right.
comes
Right.
because it's not a punishment. It's like pinches to warn you. It's like uh, God is most gracious, most merciful. It comes because of His mercy. Like even when the angels said, throw them in hell, but God said, I know what you don't know. And He gave us one more chance, right? Uh, and only
Hmm.
God knows.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a reflex. It's like when you hurt yourself, there's pain. The pain is like telling you it's pain it hurts, but the pain is telling you there's something is wrong. For example, if you're having stomach ache and you don't take care of it, and there may be something major going on and you never know, and it's end up being worse and worse and worse. Similarly, when obeying God and following God's path, if something bad happens, we really need to stop and think what's going on, because we doing everything we're supposed to do. So reflect on ourselves and repent. And if we don't do that, and if we just heedlessly keep walking and just ignore the bad things happening, and then things gonna get worse and worse, and sooner or later we think we are submitters, but uh, in reality we're no longer submitter anymore, and we're just living in that delusional world that that just hallucinating that we are submitters, and we are just so happy, but then there are problems happening in our life. So these negative things happens. These are like pain that God is telling us that something is wrong, and go do something about it, mashallah.
Yeah. So do you guys think we can end the study if you guys have no more comments or questions?
Yeah, inshallah.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you all for joining. God willing, our next study is going to be on Saturday and at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time. And God willing, Ali will be our teacher. Thank you for joining. God bless you all. Assalamu alaikum.
So
Oh my God.